Okay, so I have created a small cheat sheet which you will find attached to this lecture. Now in this sheet, everything, almost everything that we need in our daily usage of our database migrations, all the column types, all the modifiers, all the indexes and foreign keys are defined here. All right, so let's go ahead and see one by one. Some of them we will utilize by creating the migrations, but most of them we are going to talk about only them. So this is big increments. Now the big increments are basically, it creates an unsigned big integer. So big integer means integer that normally accepts some characters. The big integer accepts more than that characters. So the normal value of an integer is up to 10 characters. All right, so that automatically the big integer, unsigned big integer, accepts the 10 characters. Then again we have the big so sorry, this is the big increments which will go up to 10 characters. Then we have the big integer, this is, then we have binary, obviously this is a blob, and blob can be used for most of the cases like storing images, files, and most of the stuff. Then we have boolean, similar to the blob as well. Then we have characters. Then we have date, the most commonly used. Then date time, decimal. So decimal is basically a float. All right, and double is basically also a float. It also represents the float as well. Then we have enum here. So enum means like we define a particular values, and any value that exists within those values, only that will be allowed to insert into the database. Let's take a look at that, this enum part here. So let's go back to our migrations where we have database migrations and this one. So let's take a look at the enum here. So table enum, and then enum will accept the column name. So the column name, let's say maybe prefix, and then it accepts the values, allowed values as well. So we can set this to an array, maybe the prefix could be Mr., Mrs., Miss, and stuff like that. And we can also set the default here as well, and the default could be like Mr. Now any value that comes from the form and tries to insert into this enum column, only those values will be inserted which match any of these. All right, if none of these matches, then it will throw an error or the data will not be inserted into the database. Okay, float is also basically we can set the precisions for the float as well. So if I go for the float here, and if I set this to maybe, let's say, price. All right, and then inside the float, what I can do, I can also define the number of words or length of the words inside the float as well. So for example, let's say the price goes up to millions or billions. All right, the normal float will not allow you to insert more than 8 records, more than 8 length of words. All right, so it should go in normal, it will be go like 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. All right, above than that this will not work. What we can do is basically we can set the total length of the character. So let's say maybe I want to accept this as 20, and we can also set the precision, like the places, number of decimal places, to 2 as well. So 3 4 up to so on, like it totally depends upon us. So the final outcome of this could be like 1024.7675 in this case, because we have set the precision to 3 decimal places. All right, now we have the integer, then we have JSON. So the JSON column is used to store the data in the form of JSON. Then we have JSON blob, long text, which we have talked about in our previous video, medium integer, medium text, morphs. Now this morphs is basically, it creates 2 columns in the database, but it is used for relationships, and those relationships are called polymorphic relationships. We will talk about these morphs later on when we will dive into our relationships series, but as of now we are not going to touch this part. Then we have small integer, string, text, Then we have timestamp. So this is basically one, and timestamps are to basically ads created and updated at timestamps. Then we have the tiny integer. Then we have UUID. So UUID basically, the Laravel has another method of creating a primary keys which is known as UUID. Alright, so instead of this, where we have the post table where we create the id, we can set this to as UUID as well. So what this will do, this will basically creates an id which will be not in the form of integer like 123, that could be a long string as well. So we will also talk about that in our later stages, like in our later videos we will see how the UUID works. All right, but as of now we can stick with the id. Then we have modifiers. In the modifiers we have default. So we have learned like we can set the default value as well. We have nullable, we have also talked about that. Unsigned is used to set the column type to unsigned for numeric values. All right, the comment. Now the comment is really like, for example, I have created this column here. I can also pass the comment to this column as well. So let's say, for example, I want to pass the comment like this can be used for prefixes. All right, now what will happen is like when I will run the migration, so all this comment will automatically be displayed under the column name. So let's do that. I will type in PHP artisan migrate fresh. Now the migration has ran successfully. Let's take a look into our columns. So here we have posts. Now you can see the prefix is set to this can be used as prefixes. And if I go to the structure here, you will see this also has the type of enum which contains the default Mr., Mrs. and Miss, and the default is Mr. Alright, and here are the comments. Now we also talked about the after, so we can use the insert some columns after the some specific column. Then we have not talked about the index and unique. So what this will do, so here where we are inside our posts table, let me open that, this one. Now as you might understand and guessed that the slug should always be unique. It cannot be similar, it cannot contain similar words. And we can also set the title to as unique as well, but we are not going to for that. Let's set the title to unique. Now what this unique will do, if there is a title already exists, let's say testing, just for an example, and if another testing tries to insert into the column, so Laravel will automatically throw an error that the id should be uniqueable. All right, now the next is basically we have index here. So the index is basically, index are really important when it comes to the database optimization. We create the indexing of the columns. Now why are the indexing is important? Because when we search a column and if the index is applied on that, the query will perform much more faster than the regular search. For example, just for an example, if I make this column a unique but not index, and if I try to search the data from this slug column, the query might take a little more time than the normal if the index is not applied. All right, but if the index is applied, the query will work much faster. And the last thing is basically we have already talked about, and that is basically the foreign keys. So we have seen like how we can create foreign keys inside our post underscore comments here, and this summarizes the migrations section, because we have almost covered all the scenarios of the migration for this level, but there are still a lot of things like similarly to polymorphic relationships. We have some things that we are leaving as of now, but I will cover those in our later and advanced series.